I wrote this probably about a month ago now, maybe a little longer since we tried to record this and didn't record anything for a month. But this is I'm just going to go into it. I don't know what else to say. It's called Off. The details are hazy, but let me try to explain. Winter stapled a dozen keep out signs to my exposed hands and face, but addiction is an illiterate and voracious pet, and I tend to be an enabler in my relationships. My snowflake suburb hustled through the shadows, homogeneous, as I inhaled angst and belched delinquency. Snow nestled in my eyelashes. Snow melted on the pavement, and I wondered if I was the only one who noticed. The part of me named Protagonist hoped so. I snuffed out the orange pinprick, tethering my walk to a motive, and turned back to head home. A light turned on beside me. An empty room on the second floor of an unremarkable southern colonial shone like a keyhole. A single bulb dangled from a string. And off. It was a passing thought, and so I passed it, thoughtless, headphones delivering me from scene to scene. The light went on again, and this time I paused. I couldn't see anyone in the room. The light went off. I crossed the street backwards, keeping my eyes on the dark spot expectantly, and it delivered. On. I could see the room fully now. Empty white walls, ceiling bare, the light switch touch-starved. Off. I stood for a few seconds. On. The door was closed, the room was desolate, and it was shockingly bold for it to ask for attention from the midnight suburb. Off. I could think of two reasons. There was either a wiring problem or the house owners had kidnapped an electrician. Wiring problems seemed more likely. I started to laugh. I still do when I think about it. These people have an empty room in their house with a light that blinks constantly, and their solution was to close the door to that room. Effective, I guess. Why was the room empty? Maybe it was once a bedroom and they moved out because both reading and sleeping were made much more difficult than usual. And now that's the room they don't go into because the light turns on and off. That's the lights room. What are they going to do, unscrew the bulb? It was just on, it's too hot. Or maybe they're romantically baiting fireflies in a bizarre power fantasy. It had worked on me. The light went on. My hands absent-mindedly massaged each other in the pocket of my sweatshirt, and I was suddenly aware of my silhouette, poised dangerously to strike out against this good American community. I was a disenfranchised neighborhood watchman's dream job. Off. Frigid and depleted of angst, I walked home. The snow melted on the sidewalk. I don't remember what house it was. I don't know what I did after that moment. I say winter because I remember it being cold, but I made up the snow. I made it all up, actually. Everything but the light. On, off. Maybe the hostage electrician is dead, and maybe he's followed his newfound passion to a job as a lighthouse keeper. On. I'm losing my memories. I don't know why. Years have fallen from my life and melted into the frightened static that burns behind my eyes, that lifts me from bed and drags me through months I expect to lose, that weaves between my fingers and scurries across my tongue, that speaks in muted voices and dances in tessellating shapes in an opaque mirror, that flickers on and off in a black fog. I can describe to you the prickling cactus of Midwestern winter and its inhospitable grin, but I can't tell you when. And I'm embarrassed, and I hide it. Memory is the wage of a journey unpaid, and I feel like a firefly flickering through personhood. In my pocket, there's a white room periodically stolen by darkness. In my pocket, there's names without faces and photo books from which I borrow my soul. In my pocket, I stand in the darkness and look through a keyhole, waiting ravenously for the light. Off.
So it's a good one. It has, I don't know, I really like the way that you end all your stories. You kind of wrap it all up into this bow, this thematic bow. And this one, or at least, just kind of knowing you, it's a bit of a personal one for you because, I don't know, hanging out with you, you mention your fear of losing memory every now and again. And I don't know, I like seeing it kind of pushed into this medium.
It's a strange one. It's kind of hard to. It really is. It really
Horrifying.
terrifies me. I think that's one of the worst ways to go out with Alzheimer's or dementia. Just losing your memory. It seems like it's stripping you of your personhood, and the idea that it happens to me in such a secretive way. You don't even recognize it when it happens. Really shakes me.
Yeah. I was thinking about it the other day about dementia. And, yeah, just at some point it just all goes, and that's horrifying to think about. And I think that this kind of scratches at that in kind of a very interesting way. You can't really trust the writer in a sense because they're just lying to fill in the gaps, but you can't really say that they're lying for bad reasons. It's because they're afraid, or they just don't know what to say.
And the way you've presented it here is, I feel like, I don't know, I do agree with you guys that the idea of it is absolutely fucking mortifying, but I don't know, this poem to me reads as like, or I don't know, would you call it a poem or a story, whatever it is. This piece to me feels like sort of like an appreciation of the potential beauty that can be seen from as a product of that, where it's like, just the entire reveal about halfway through, where the narrator talks about how the only thing they can remember is the flickering light and the winter and the snow melting on the sidewalk, and all of that was just details that they'd made up. And it's just like, you feel deceived and you feel lied to, which is like scary, but also like you can't really deny the fact that by filling in those details in that admittedly artificial way, they have enhanced your experience. They made the story a lot more interesting, and
Definitely.
something about that is, I don't know, it's just very, it's like a strangely positive look on it, I feel, or at least that's how I want to read it.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Do you think I was kind of like noticed it this time, and I noticed this time, and it wasn't really any way that you presented it, but it never really dawned on me. But you were talking about the hypothetical, or what kind of causes room to flicker, and how maybe the people of the house dealt with it, and they kind of, in a sense, they throw a blanket over it. You talk about how they don't go in the room. That's the lights room. They were so easy to surrender it, and in a sense, I don't know. I feel like that could kind of be tied into the rest of the story because there obviously memory loss is kind of unpreventable, but there are things that do help with it, and there's there are precautions you can do, but no one necessarily makes tries to really act upon it. No one who's afraid of it, tries that hard to remember. I don't think.
You know, that idea you just presented, George, of like, I'm gonna like take what you said and like kind of embellish it in a way to like fit into like another observation that I just made when Matt was reading it. But
Please do.
you know, the idea that I'm gonna like broaden what you were saying to just the sentiment of, you can plan all you want, but you can never predict what's going to happen. You can plan a picnic, but you can't control the weather type shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's kind of an idea that's very like prevalent in the movie Parasite. And I don't know, when Matt was reading it to me, it just kind of reminded me of like the end of that movie where,
I thought the
you
same
know,
thing.
yeah, where
With
the
the
dad is
light.
like stuck there. Yeah, and he's just flickering, he's just tapping out this Morse code message for years, hoping his son sees it. And I don't know, I didn't think of that the first time Matt read this to us like a month ago,
Yeah.
but it occurred to me now.
I think what I really like about the idea of the light, because it really does come back to me a lot. I probably saw this like 4 or 5 months ago. Now, I actually saw the light flickering on and off, and it would just make me laugh, dude. But I think what makes it a great symbol is that it could literally mean anything. And in the context of Parasite, it's a problem or something. It's the lid of a well. It's something that covers up such a deeper problem that is normally just cast off with a passing thought.
Yeah. All right, should I go next?
I think
Yeah.
so.
I really enjoyed
All
that
right.
one.
Yeah, that was sick. Okay,
Thanks.
this one, I mean, now you guys know because I read it to you in our last recording such that went awry, but I'm not going to give much background on this one because I want you guys to point it out to stroke my ego. So I'm just gonna start reading it. I kept walking with no end in sight. I couldn't remember when it happened, but the carpet beneath my socked feet became rock solid. I didn't dare reach down and feel it with my hands, for I knew I had to keep walking. I didn't know what instinct this was based on, but I knew better than to question it. My heart rate quickened. I was thankful for my habit of sleeping with socks on, as it was definitely better than being barefoot. How had I slipped into this hell? I've been walking for what felt like hours, but was most likely just several minutes. The cold air sapped the strength from my muscles, but I kept going. I had to keep going. My fear had not fully subsided, but rather burrowed its way under my skin and transformed into something less immediate. With nothing else to pay attention to, I listened as intently as I could, for danger, for salvation, for anything really. Each time I was simply greeted with the reverberation of my feet against the stone under. When had the reverberation begun? Paying more attention to this phenomenon, I noticed that several minutes later, each of my steps seems to have a delayed reflection from the cavernous walls of this abyss I found myself in. Now they were rhythmic, as loud as the initial impact. Was the space growing? My pace quickened, as did the sound I was trying to escape, naturally. Booming inside my head, I was fated to lose this race. I'm facing another me, not bound by mortal concepts such as stamina or strength. Where the fuck am I? Alright, what do we think, boys?
I think it's pretty fucking beast,
Terrifying.
bro. It's pretty beastly.
Terrifying.
It is.
It scares the shit out of me.
It's something that really like kind of scares me about it. Or at least you know how at the end you kind of describe this unmortal version of yourself. And throughout the piece, you know, it's this character trying to really put together where the hell they are, or where the fuck they are. If we're to you know, I don't know where I'm going with that, but
No swearing on the podcast.
sorry, mom. But
Demonetized.
you know, I think in such a void as the one the character's placed in, the truest enemy is the self. It is yourself, you know, is your mind.
Ooh.
And it's kind
Definitely.
of untangible and undying in a sense. And, you know, you say that it's not affected by stamina in any way. You know, your mind's always kind of going. And in areas like that where fear is so prominent and, you know, your sense is heightened because you have no clue where you are, it really does become your worst enemy in such a prolonged state of fear. And so that just kind of clicked inside me.
That is a really interesting read because,
Interesting.
like, I didn't really have much of an idea of what this would be going into it. I was just kind of writing because, you know, as was pointed out during the last recording, this is a direct continuation of the first poem I read on this podcast, and like I thought that would be a very perfect place to like go with the theme of isolation because that's just kind of about this person like slipping from a place of absolute comfort into a place of absolute loneliness. And I thought expanding on that idea would be really interesting. And I don't know, I was careful to leave it extremely vague because I wanted it to be, I don't know, easily read as whatever people felt they could impose over top of this feeling that it evokes of, you know, because literally all that the story is a person walking in this infinite space and noticing the sound of their footsteps, like interacting with an acoustic environment that they can't seem to perceive in any other way apart from their hearing. And that just kind of starts driving them insane. And it's very much a product of their own action and a product of their own, I guess, innate instincts to keep walking. Because, you know, when you're in a situation like that, what the fuck would you even do? You know, you just probably just keep doing the last thing you did. You just kind of
Yeah.
like default and your brain turns off. And something about that is just so scary to me. Just the idea of like your own instincts, the things that we're taught to trust above all, being your actual downfall and digging you deeper into this hole. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people can relate to with the way like the rules of success and even just being in today's age changing so drastically with like the advent of technology and the internet. I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot you could read into it.
Yeah.
Because of just how insanely vague it is. And I didn't have any of that in mind when I wrote it. I just kind of like thought about that after I'd written it.
I think what I really like about it is that it's relying on and bouncing between two very primal fears. The first of which is the void-like space of this infinite blackness that you can't see anywhere, and you're just walking in and you can't find any limit to. And what's really struck me as strange when you were reading it is that how often we see that kind of thing, that kind of void people are wandering through in media. The reality is that's such a shared fear, but it will never happen to anyone. That is never an experience you'll have in your life that will last longer than maybe 30 seconds, groping through the darkness in your room. But the idea of this void that you continually walk through, never seeing any light, is never something that'll happen. And the second is this idea of being hunted by something. And I think, which I heard a little more at the end of just something ageless or something that doesn't know stamina. And what that struck me as is kind of this childish fear that we would all have walking from the light switch to our beds in the middle of the night as kids, just inventing in the darkness those monsters beyond definition just because you can't see them whatsoever. You can't put a name or a limitation to them.
That's a really, really good read. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a lot less grand of my own read, but I think I like that one better just because of how much more. I don't know. I was like extrapolating a lot, and you weren't doing that as much, and I think that makes it better because it's more like directly tied to the actual imagery of the poem. Good shit.
He on top.
No, nothing to be afraid of. It's just fear itself.
Okay, John F. Kennedy.
Roosevelt, and also I stole that.
Go get in a car.
You're gonna get your brains blown out, you piece of shit.
We have nothing to be afraid of except being assassinated.
We have nothing to fear except for a 50 caliber sniper rifle bullet.
Wrong president. Wrong president.
Wait, who said we have nothing to fear but fear itself? Wasn't that John F. Kennedy?
That's FDR, right? No.
That was John F. Kennedy, I'm pretty sure.
No, it wasn't.
The only you know why I thought it was John F. Kennedy? Because of the song Cult of Personality, they sample it at the beginning of the song, and then in one of the verses, he says, like, he name drops John F. Kennedy, so I assumed it was him that says that.
I think that was about World War II. I think it was FDR, but now I'm doubting myself.
Let's
We'll
gaslight
see.
Matt.
It's all in your head.
It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. it's all in your head, 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 it's all in your head. It's all in your head, 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 it's all in your head. It's all in your head, 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 it's all in your head. It's all in your head, 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 it's all in your head. It's all in your head, 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 it's all in your head. All right, so Beaver. All right, let's see. I've been like pacing around my room at this point, and I have it on my laptop, so I got to figure out a good configuration.
I've just been kind of squatting in front. Like I have my laptop on the ground between my knees, and like I'm squatting, and I have a finger up my asshole. That's kind of how I'm doing this right now.
You're lying.
Yeah.
Are you?
I wasn't lying about
I've
the
got-
squatting on the ground with my laptop in front of me, though. That's real.
Nice. I have my mic propped up on like 4 or 5 books here.
I have
And
my
I'm
elbow
sitting
leaned
at
against my
my computer.
bed.
All right. So Beaver. There's not really much context or really anything that prompted this. I just kind of wrote it one day. I'd say fairly recent, within like maybe a month and a half, if I remember correctly. So here we go. It's called Beaver. 7:35 p.m. I received a text message from what appeared to be my number neighbor, a trend that began to take a rise as of lately. It was entertaining to see what people would say to those with near identical numbers to theirs. Being a moderately lonely 30-something, I picked up the phone to initiate conversation. Their message read, "Do not be alarmed. I am your number neighbor. I'd like to have a conversation and test our compatibilities. B." I sat for a few minutes questioning a few things, but gave into the option of actually having a conversation with someone who wasn't my 67-year-old mother or my dull coworkers. I thought for a moment and messaged back, "Yo, sound cool. What's going on, B?" I immediately I began to feel like an idiot, but they messaged back and seemed to be unfazed. We continued to talk throughout the night and express WBU. Have you seen the lighthouse? I went to New York once, but when I was 17. The typical every world pleasantries we reply with. I feel like an alien reflecting on things I said isolated. They asked a lot of questions and answered few. I was perplexed about their demeanor, but I valued their company through the night. What does B stand for? I so foolishly messaged, after warming up to them. It took them a few minutes to reply, and at 9:58 p.m. they replied, Beaver. Beaver. An odd name, I thought, but it got much weirder when they added, I'm a beaver. We don't really have names. At first I thought it was some funny-ass joke, so I played along. Okay, Beaver. If you really are a beaver, send a selfie. I smirked and turned the volume up on my TV. I laughed a little, and I realized I was much too preoccupied to watch Kindergarten Cop for the third time. I turned off the TV. It was a little cold out, colder than it had been the past few days. I caressed the window with the back of my hand. My phone lit up through my sweatpants. There was no message, but a photo. A photo of an actual fucking beaver, taken from a lower angle, and it showed the beaver's face looking down intensely. Its eyes lit up by the flash, had an innocent but wild look. There was no chance this beaver could be writing this, I thought to myself. I saved and reverse image searched the photo. The page loaded as fast as my apartment's Wi-Fi could load, but found nothing. I sat there a second to think out the possibilities. It was moments later they added to the conversation, Yob left me on red. You. The fuck? Sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I don't believe you. I saw the 3 dots wiggle on the left side above my keyboard, and then the message popped in. 36.983.086, negative 88.169.794. Come find me. I grabbed my keys, and I had my arms halfway through the sleeves of my jacket when I paused at the doorknob. What the fuck am I actually doing? Am I really this bored? I should just go to sleep, or go shoot darts at the place across the street tomorrow. My cat rubbed against my leg. I stared at my half-laced shoes. What am I thinking? This is so stupid. I looked at the coordinates again. They were close by. All I had to do was go down 24 and get off towards Grand Rivers. No sweat. Are you coming? Questioned the beaver. OMW, I replied. A youthful reflex kicked me over. When I was young, I'd just say fuck it and drive anywhere in the middle of the night. It was the best time of my life. Stuff like this was fun, and this was my chance to relive it. I didn't think once about the potential dangers of the rendezvous, but I suppose I internalized it to some extent. My heart raced all the way there. It was a silent car ride, but I never thought to turn on the radio. The car's hull was filled with my excited and labored breath. I was too preoccupied within my thoughts. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this way. So invested, so panicked. I felt something, and that was it. I followed the coordinates as far as I could in my car, and then went on foot. Before me was a grove that canopied a wet matting of dirt. My phone was blowing up with messages from the beaver, my number neighbor. A series of conversation pieces flew through my home screen, and eventually through the woods I saw it. The faint glow within the grove. The beaver. As I slowly approached, the sound of clicking echoed against the empty night. Soon within my line of sight stared the beaver. It didn't make a noise, but a slight chuck from beneath its orange teeth. Hello? I greeted the beaver. It looks at me, not with intent, but curiosity. Curiosity of a wild animal. I went down on my knees. Hey! I snapped my finger. Yo, you told me to come out here. Nothing. It just stayed put, illuminated by the glow of a mudded old Samsung phone. Of course. It's just a fucking beaver. I hold my head. How fucking stupid am I? I stand up, twisted around, and begin to pace. What the fuck is going on with me? What the fuck is going on with this beaver? I said out loud. The beaver sat before the phone, looking none the wiser than your average beaver. As I leaned back against a tree, the beaver started to frantically paw at the screen, like there was something within. It was like a dog trying to get to the other side of a closed door. It wanted something but couldn't get it. I wanted something as well. I'm so bored. I'm so lonely. This is my desperate attempt to make something of one of my nights. An exciting new voice turned out to be a fucking prank. Guaranteed I have no clue how, but this beaver's just a fucking beaver. My life's one huge joke, and this is God's way of confirming it. I slid my back down the tree trunk and plopped my ass down in the mud. My phone vibrated. The light pierced through my pants ever so faintly. There was a new message from my number neighbor. It said, "Life can be twisted sometimes. I will admit, there are many days you will go through that make you feel like you're at the bottom of the barrel. It seems like you felt this way for a long time now. You're special, though. I need you to believe me when I tell you this. Well, you're just an ordinary man, and I, a simple beaver. We're both connected in one very important way. Fate. What did you seek when you oh so instinctively hopped in your car? A friend? Talking beaver? Some stranger in the woods? This whole occurrence was totally off from the start, and you know it. You felt it from the very beginning, but you've been pushing it back the entire time. You're so desperate for it to come to you. You wait in your apartment every day just hoping something amazing will happen, but it won't. You can go play darts, but you'll always play alone because you've closed yourself off from the idea of taking the first step. This is no message from God or an elaborate prank. You can consider this a lesson, but it's all just a seemingly impossible happening. Paranormal by definition, but nothing ethereal. Yes, you can call what is happening tonight amazing, but you shouldn't compare it to your past experiences. You miss your youth, you miss your friends, and all the fun times you've had. You may stay in touch with them, but they're all living their lives, and it's time you do too. Don't compare right now, or any other time in the future, to times you've already had. You're making new memories, and so far they've turned out to be pretty lonely. I encourage you to go out and talk to someone. Small talk may seem trivial, but we all kind of start off this way. Come on. Even we did it at first. Cool emoji. B. I looked up from my phone to the sound of a whistling high-pitched crack. There was a brief flash, brighter than the LED screen of my phone, and then it went dark. Fuck, muddle out. In a panic, I shake my phone to initiate the flashlight. There's a faint chemical stench and a desaturated green smoke in the air. It's thin but ever so slightly visible. I follow its raising plume downwards to see the beaver's old Samsung phone, cracked and broken. The inside circuitry was fried, and the lithium battery was blown wide open, laid to rest beside it, a faceless beaver.
Oh.
It's fucking amazing. There's so much I want to say about it. I'm gonna start off by posing the question to Matt of what do you think what do you think was actually happening in a very literal sense with the beaver and the phone?
I thought about this video I saw of CeeLo Green talking on the phone, and then it just blew up in his face. I thought it was just a freak accident with the like the Samsungs used to explode.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I
thought it was just.
I was more asking about like how the beaver was contacting this
Oh.
person. Yeah.
I thought about it at the end. I don't know. I thought it was kind of I don't know. I saw it as like a storybook, you know? I feel like to see it in print I would want there to be illustrations next to it. Just kind of a fantastical adventure thing. At the same time, it also felt like an ayahuasca vision quest, where he sees the beaver and realizes that he can never be a chieftain. because his soul is not a lion.
The way I like to read it is just sheer fucking chance. It was just an actual literal beaver, nothing special about it, that happens to find this phone, that happens to have the SIM card in it, that was the same, that happened to be the number neighbor of this protagonist, and happened to just be tapping at the screen in the perfect places to send those texts while trying to kill itself by piercing the lithium battery. The entire time it was just trying to paw its way through the screen to kill itself, and everything else that happened from there was pure coincidence.
No God.
You think predictive text has gone too far?
Yeah. That's how I like to read it. And I don't know, I like the absolute impossibility of it. You know, considering the fact that it corrected its own mistakes, the fact that it consistently was using proper grammar, the fact that it used emojis and signed all of its texts, the fact that it was hitting the random keys in the right order to fit within the context of the conversation, to respond with a selfie, to send the exact coordinates it was at. I love that. I love just the absolute fucking that entire monologue at the end too is like, you know, just imagining that that's the last thing it created before killing itself. The fact that the entire time it's just trying to kill itself, and yet it managed to have such a massive impact on this one person's life without even realizing it. It's such a powerful fucking statement to me about like art and the creation of it, and how it can affect people because of it just being subjective by nature. In that you could create anything, literally anything at all, and there's probably somebody out there who it would fucking like, yeah, sure, it's probably like insanely impossible that it would ever reach that person, but on the off chance that it does, you know, it might just change their fucking life. And that's like something that like, I don't know, George read this to me a long time ago, like maybe like a month and a half ago when he first wrote it. And it had a very profound effect on me, and I still feel it when he read it just now, because I've been thinking about it. It's just kind of embedded itself in my brain ever since then. It's one of my favorite pieces of writing I've ever had the pleasure of reading. It's so fucking good. I love it.
Yo.
It's fantastic. Why do you assume, if this is just a normal beaver, that it was trying to kill itself by digging through the phone?
That's the only explanation. I don't know. It just seems to make sense with like why it would be tapping away at the phone. You know, and there's that line about there's the line about when he first finds the beaver that, you know, it's just scratching away at the phone, trying to uncover something within, and that just kind of reads to me as like it's just trying to explode the lithium battery. And you know, we may not know why the beaver's trying to kill itself, but I feel like that's besides the point. I think it's just like, I feel like the beaver being as temporary as it is, you know, just literally ceasing to exist after like having this profound effect on this person by sheer chance is like a very beautiful thing too, in its own way. And the fact that like, you know, if I was in this protagonist's shoes and that beaver like did that to me, I would probably just want to adopt it and keep it around for the rest of my life. But the fact that it doesn't do that, the fact that he doesn't have the opportunity to even do that, to pay it back in any way, I don't know. Something about that's really beautiful to me.
I think talking about the empty apartment at the beginning, um and just generally being alone, I connected that to the beaver itself as an animal and their tendency to build nests and wash their food and such. That it's like it's a relatively human animal, and in that sense, it seems like the beaver itself is also just isolated at its house with a cell phone and making this desperate attempt to connect with this character. And I think it's like it's a warning of sorts. It's the cautionary tale of imparting its own wisdom about itself to this character because it sees it in itself, and that's the only place wisdom or honest advice can really come from. And in the same sense, I think George is writing this story to himself as the beaver in an equally fantastical way to put it in terms that he can understand. And
Yeah, that was kind of my first impression upon hearing it the first time, was like, oh man, I felt like you wrote this because that was just something you really needed to hear for yourself. And I think that the fact that you decided to do that is really powerful. That like, instead of looking for answers anywhere else, you just kind of came up with them yourself, and that's like big dick shit.
I I don't know about big dick shit, but that was kind of what happened. I moved out. I live in an apartment, and I have no roommates, and it does get pretty lonely. Although I do have company, and I feel loved and stuff like that. I can't help but feel lonely, especially with just how closed off the world is right now. And although I never
Yeah.
initially set out to make the beaver a tale that would help me find an answer to that or whatever, um, it just kind of came. As dumb as it is, I initially started the story with the idea. I was like, "Hey, it would be fucking hilarious if a beaver texted a guy on the phone." And the thing is, as everything's like kind of settled in, and as I was writing it, you know, you tend to write about your surroundings and your mental state, whether you notice it or not. And I think that's where it came through. And I started thinking about the story, and it snowballed into something bigger, and it exceeded my own thoughts and what I knew so far, and it kind of it made that brand new idea, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I
Um,
Kurt
think,
Vonnegut said something along the lines of, "You should never write about yourself because no matter what you write about, you'll be writing about yourself."
yeah.
yeah,
And that's Throckmorton's delusion.
Oh,
Kurt Vonnegut really has been just consistently spitting facts his entire career. Like,
he's a
well, I
baller.
think one of my favorite things out of anything I've read from him is I don't really exactly remember the context in which it occurs, but he just basically says like the meaning of life is to be the eyes, the ears, and the consciousness of the creator of the universe. You fool! I fucking love that. That's such a good fucking line.
Isn't that a Milo lyric?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
quoting Kurt Vonnegut when he says that.
he's taking
Oh,
a doo doo
okay.
in a bathroom, in the
Yeah,
gas station
one time I was
bathroom.
taking a doo doo at a gas station. I've been listening to so much Milo lately. I've been
Me
going through his
too.
older stuff.
Me too. Me too.
Oh my god, hey
Me
twin!
too. Me
Queen.
too.
Um, I was
What a
I was listening to a Kurt Vonnegut audiobook and standing in the line for a food truck, and he like breaks a fourth wall and shit like that. And like it sometimes happens when you don't really realize it. And at one point when I was listening to it and he like did it, I like made like a noise. Like I was like, "Oh!"
Dude, there's like these old recordings of like beat poets from that era just kind of like reading their poetry to each other, and it's really funny how much like all the other poets in the room are just like actual like just hype men for whoever's like reading their shit. Like they'll just be like hooting and hollering. It's fucking awesome. I love the energy to it. It's really fun.
Yo, we gotta get Ginsburg on the podcast.
Ginsburg on the beat.
Is is Ginsburg alive?
No, he's dead.
Damn.
Dig up his grave.
I really love Ginsberg's writing, and one of my friends fucking hates his writing and all beat poets. Like, do you like Jack Kerouac?
I don't know. I haven't read any of his stuff.
He has this album that's called like I forget its name, but there's a track on it called like the like contraption of human meat or something like that. It's one of my favorite poems. It's like he had a really distinctive style because he was just kind of like doing spoken word poetry over like free jazz instrumentals and stuff. Like he's definitely like a character. I really enjoy his work. I
Hmm.
think you should check him out. He's on Spotify.
Nice.
Yeah. But one thing I will say is that you mentioned at the beginning that you're reading like the edited version of Beaver, and when you shared it with me, it was before Matt had the chance to read through and give you some tips on editing it. And one thing, after you did that, I went back and read it again to see what suggestions you made, and I agreed with every single one of them except for one. And as soon as I saw it, I had to call up George and tell him, "Hey, don't take his advice on this one." And I'm glad you didn't because you
War.
said Matt, you wrote something like it was the line where the guy finds the beaver and he describes it as looking none the wiser than your average beaver, and you said that's stupid, get rid of that. And I'm really
I did
glad
not comment that.
you didn't say
That's
that exactly, but you said
paraphrasing. That's definitely
yeah.
paraphrasing.
Yeah. Okay. So the exact phrasing you used
You
was.
can't paraphrase me and make me sound like an asshole.
All right.
That's
I'm
libel.
strawmanning. I'm a leftist. I have to stand for you.
Are we keeping this in? It's
Prepare
kinda
to get
funny.
bottom text.
I want to keep this in. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Okay, so the actual phrasing you used was like, I don't know about this. I don't think the average beaver looks wise. I don't know. I think that's the point, dude.
It's kind of like the bat boy has a strength of 20 bats, or like the perception of 20 bats.
It was so funny. I remember reading that for the first time and just fucking losing my shit because it was so funny. And I'm really glad you decided to leave it in. Fuck you, Matt. I hate you.
Hey,
Yo, fuck you. You just recommended Jack Kerouac talking over free jazz. You just said listen to this album where Jack Kerouac talks over free jazz. You just said that to me.
You're a Philistine
Get
because
the
you're
fuck outta
criticizing
here.
art. You're criticizing art without experiencing it firsthand, you fucking Philistine.
you fascist. Oh my gosh.
Bro,
he
you
killed
gotta
him, you
check out this
fascist.
beat poetry free jazz album.
Fuck
Just gotta.
you. Fuck you, you white honky
Nordic.
Nordic.
All the Nordics in the club say, hey.
If you got a $20 bill, put your hands up. If you got a $5 bill, put your hands up. If you got a $1 bill, put your hands up. All the ladies in the club, make noise. I think we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that should be the last thing we hear.